I worked a lot. I have extensive management experience. At one point, I managed more than 25,000 people. I built the largest holding company in one of the industries, which became a world leader under my management. A number of different governments regularly reviewed our analytical reports. We maintained active operations in 4 countries, and several organizations read them as well. So I have a lot of experience. Now, why did we focus on real estate? Why did we switch focus? It so happened that we bought a lot of different apartments and houses in Cyprus. And when we finally realized that we could even make a significant amount of money from this simply by understanding the complexities of the market, that is, knowing exactly where to buy, where you can later sell for a profit, do extensive renovations, for example, or something else entirely. It turned out that around 4 years ago, we got deeply involved, saw that we had learned a great deal about the real estate market, and accordingly, we thought, why not share it with others? What is truly special and unique about our specific knowledge? I can say right away, maybe it will sound immodest, but right here in Cyprus, as you might expect, of course, the knowledge about the real estate market that is published is, I would say, rather primitive. For example, I personally heard many times say in some random YouTube video something like, real estate is growing by 5 to 6% every single year, right? Well, honestly, that's all just complete and utter nonsense. So in actual reality, if you look at the facts, the existing knowledge in this industry is quite modest, consisting of much more talk than substantive analysis. In general, it is a rather primitive level. When we first started working in this specific field, we simply could not find any reliable information. Consequently, we were forced to do this work independently. Let me add a couple more words about what we did and how we are different. There was absolutely no other information available. So we started gathering and collecting more data on our own. Everything about every offer on the market, absolutely everything. As it turns out, about 200,000 or so listings appear over a span of 6 months to a year. But in reality, when we consider the properties that are actually being sold, in Cyprus, there are currently about 40,000 properties listed on the real estate market. Of those, about 12,000 are houses and semi-detached houses, and the remaining, roughly 28,000, are apartments. That's what we found out. We started collecting and tracking both rentals and sales. We constantly update our information. We began to see what was really happening in the market. This is our unique feature. That's what emerged. In other words, others don't have this kind of information. Later on, we designed our specialized programs in such a way that they were specifically capable of filtering out and joining, for example, those cases where the exact same apartment is advertised 17, 20, or even 36 times, which is something we have actually seen happen. But our programs count that apartment only once when tallying the number of apartments. They don't count duplicates. If, for example, you want to know how many are being sold in a particular region, our programs filter all that out and analyze it. Another truly significant and fascinating achievement we made, which we'll discuss in detail now. So you can fully understand that we're not just pulling these numbers out of thin air, is that we successfully taught our program to meticulously read the entire text of an advertisement, to read every single detail very carefully. That's exactly why, for example, we frequently caught specific situations where, let's say, you're searching for something specific on Bazaraki or perhaps somewhere else entirely. Well, let's just say, for example, you're looking for an apartment with built-in underfloor heating. On Bazaraki, you'll find, say, only 3 apartments, but with us, you'll find 13. Now, why exactly is that? Because our program thoroughly reads the text on Bazaraki or any other site. It actually reads the entire text. And if, for example, the seller didn't explicitly mention in filters section of an advertisement platform that there is underfloor heating, but the program finds in the text that the apartment has underfloor heating, our program will show it to you. So we actually have much more information. We collect more data. As a result, this is our unique characteristic, our defining distinction. And that's why we are very confident, and I truly believe that at this current moment, we provide the most comprehensive information in Cyprus. Absolutely no one else can offer more. Accordingly, we also, of course, take information that comes from the land registry. And when we combine and compare all of this, we get what I'm about to tell you. And I will tell you about real estate in Cyprus. Well, as I said, first a little bit about the market. There are about 200,000 listings, but in reality, about 40,000 properties are actually being sold. So don't believe anyone who says they have 80,000 in their database. That's all nonsense. Around 40,000 are being sold. Approximately 25,000 to 28,000 apartments and about 13,000 to 14,000 houses or townhouses. On the secondary market, of those 40,000, only 11 or 12,000 are resale properties. The rest are new builds. This is what's listed for sale. Now, as for what's actually being sold, about 11,500 apartments are sold per year in 2025, and about 5,500 houses or townhouses. These are approximately the market volumes. We're talking about many billions of dollars, but I won't overwhelm you today with all those numbers. The analysis I'd like to do now is much more effectively performed using apartments, because 70% of the total residential real estate for sale is apartments. So for future reference, I hope I won't have to keep interrupting myself and saying, but for houses, it's like this. So now we'll do the analysis using apartments. Now that we are all here, let's go through the detailed analytical charts and visual data we've carefully prepared for this presentation so we can comprehensively demonstrate our findings and show every important detail. Okay, so look, here's what is in the listings. And here's what's in the listing. Right now, there are over 30,000 apartments listed for sale. And right here in the legend, the various different price ranges for these listings are clearly shown in several distinct colors. The much darker colors specifically represent the resale properties, while the noticeably lighter ones are the brand new builds. So for a quick example, let's look at properties over $1 million. This dark purple shade indicates the new builds, and this other one here is for resale, and so on throughout the legend. The color green represents the colors repeat later. During the presentation, you will see this pattern, so you can take a moment to make a note of it right now. This is 400, this is 200 to 300, and accordingly up to 200,000. This is in red. This is how it's displayed. Pay close attention to the ratio shown here, because next, this is what has been sold to customers. This is what was being sold. We look back over 8 years. These figures show the real estate that was sold across Cyprus, specifically the total number of apartments sold. Here is 2018, 2019, and so on, and here is 2025 being sold. Here you can see that this is the primary market up to 200,000. This is how many were sold on the secondary market. This is the primary market for 200 to 300,000. This is the secondary market for 200 to 300,000, and so on. Up here, you see this is how many were actually sold. This figure is specifically represented as the total number of individual properties that have been successfully sold, while the accompanying graphical chart clearly illustrates the overall transaction volume as measured in euros. Just how much has it changed? There used to be a relatively small percentage above 1 million, but now it's significantly larger than before. When we take a closer look at what is growing, what is declining, and the specific market shares across various price ranges, we can clearly observe the following pattern. We see that up to the 200,000 mark over the 3 years we are looking at 2023, 2024, and 2025. We see that it is gradually declining. The share of apartments sold for up to $200,000 is gradually increasing, and actually it's not even that gradual. It's growing from 17 to 21.4. The share of apartments in the 200,000 to 300,000 range is growing, as is the share of apartments in the 300,000 to 400,000 range. But then, attention, it starts to decline again. Luxury apartments made up 1.8% of sales in 2023, but now it's already down to 1.3%. Luxury apartments have started selling 1.5 times less in Cyprus. That is those priced over $1 million. So that is the trend in the structure. Now let's talk about the supply on the market. Take note, the supply on the market. Well, here too, there are different ranges, and the supply on the market has not really changed all that much year over year. Here, we looked at almost 2 years from 2024. This data isn't year to year, but it turned out that the trend hasn't changed. Up to 200,000, the supply has decreased. The rest have remained about the same. Now that we have looked at all of these different aspects, I really wanted to, I would like to transition to the next point, which is exactly what we decided to check. We decided to check how saturated the market currently is and what the ratio of supply looks like relative to the demand. Because only after doing that can you truly draw any meaningful conclusions, both regarding the price and regarding what is lacking or where there is a market surplus and so on. And here is the data, which, as I understand, you are seeing for the first time now. We took and divided the Cyprus into 30 area groups, components by territory. Right here on the screen, it shows the Limassol data, and so on. It continued in that same manner. So we divided everything and made the following classifications based on different ranges. And then we looked at the market, for instance, here. Let's look at those separate 150 points. That is, we split 30 territories and divided them into 5 specific price ranges to better understand the data. We thoroughly examined various parts of Cyprus, and what we did was carefully check the amount of property currently for sale on the market. For example, we looked closely at the western part of Limassol to see what is available. Right now, up to 200,000, there are 183 apartments for sale, and in 2025, 204 were sold. If you divide one by the other, you get about 0.9. This is an essential indicator for us, and we will refer back to this specific information multiple times later on. So if anyone does not fully understand it yet, it is better to write down your questions and ask for clarification now. So this important indicator clearly demonstrates exactly how much the supply exceeds the annual demand. Here it is nearly identical, but here the current supply level is substantially larger than the total amount of apartments needed to meet the entire year's market demand, creating a surplus that exceeds the necessary requirements by 8 times. Only 30 such apartments were sold in the west of Limassol and currently listed for sale. We looked at the data as of June 8th, 240 units. So I can say right away, and obviously I won't be able to do this today because it would simply take far too much of our time to thoroughly analyze each of the 30 distinct geographical areas and every specific data range involved, but I will instead direct your focus and highlight the significance of 2 particularly important points that deserve our immediate consideration. Now I'll see if I can find it. If not, never mind. I'll just explain it verbally for now. Take Limassol as an example. So there are specific figures right here that vary significantly and substantially from each other. To put it in a different way, there are certain figures where the available supply far exceeds the current market demand. And the most, well, as you can clearly see right here, yes, here it is. If anyone meets a person that wants to argue regarding a particular place in Limassol, now I will show you. Here is the most difficult situation with supply. It is located above the highway. You see here it says northern, which means beyond the highway. And there, just beyond the busy highway, as you can see, there are 6,237 apartments listed for sale. And last year, only 325 were sold. So that's where the situation is the most difficult. You see, the coefficient is 19. and that's specifically there, Agios Athanasius Panthea. And also above the highway, further east, further west, there are also such huge numbers. This is the worst situation, and the best situation in terms of when apartments appear, they are bought immediately. This is the area from Colombia to Agios Nikolaos, if you know what I mean. So this is also in Limassol. This is situated below the main highway, but it is not located directly on the coastline itself. And this is actually the most popular and highly sought after area in the region right now. It is literally right over there. I will show you, although I might not find the exact spot right away, okay? Right now, for example, up to 200,000, there are only 3 apartments listed. And if I'm not mistaken, that many were sold last year, either 51 or 71. So as you can see, the ratio is just colossal, very different. So this is exactly the kind of comprehensive and extensive work we've done, and we've very thoroughly analyzed it. Accordingly, as you can probably understand, it's really not hard at all to figure out whether the overall market price is currently rising or falling. That is, surely those who are listening to us understand this very simply. It's very simple. If you see that your ratio of demand to supply, meaning what was sold in 2025 compared to what is currently being offered, regarding what is being offered for sale, if your demand increases and supply decreases, that is the relationship between demand and supply. If it grows, then it's clear that, for example, if you look at the situation a year ago and compare it to now, it's clear that the price increases. Demand has started to exceed supply to a greater extent. That is, if the ratio has changed. Then, as a direct consequence of these market forces, the price begins to rise accordingly. Conversely, if the opposite situation happens to occur, then we see that the price falls. That is precisely why we find ourselves using this specific principle so frequently within our daily business operations. As a clear and practical example of this in action, I can say that a little over a year ago, I saw that 1-bedroom apartments would soon start to rise in price, right up to the highway, exactly in the Agia zone. Well, it's not just that they'll rise soon, but rather that the situation is such that they should be increasing in price right now. So, for example, I bought one for 254, and now I think I'll sell this brand new 1-bedroom for 320, just as an example, right? So yes, prices really are rising, and this helps us in business. I'm just explaining to you that I'm telling you it is not that difficult here. When you have this kind of data, it's not hard to make the right decisions.